News Prime.
This is Joy News Prime, your primetime news bulletin here on Joy News on Multi TV. My name is Israel Lai. In this edition, New Patriotic Party describes current tiff between Attorney General and the businessman embroiled in the judgment controversy, Alfred Woyome, as a ploy to distract Ghanaians from the real issues. Meanwhile, the Attorney General says she is confident the state will be successful in its appeal against the acquittal of Alfred Woyome on charges he fraudulently claimed a judgment debt payout. Sympathizers of ruling National Democratic Congress march in Kumasi in support of President Mahama. Outgoing USAID country director advises against Ghana's decision to rely on power barges as a short-term solution to the electricity crisis because of the prohibitive costs involved. And Parliament is considering the purchase of a $35 million plane for the Ghana Armed Forces. But minority MPs say not enough due diligence has been done on the purchase agreement. Also coming up in the next 60 minutes, we have business, sports, showbiz, and international news to stay tuned. In our very first story, the New Patriotic Party has described the recent allegations leveled against Attorney General Marietta Buapiao-Pong by businessman Alfred Woyome in the judgment debt scandal as a ploy to distract Ghanaians from the real issues. Alfred Woyome was last week acquitted of defrauding the state in the award of a 51.2 million cedis judgment debt payout, a decision the state is appealing. Mr. Woyome says the AG cannot prosecute that case, having benefited from the payout, and has called for her resignation. The Attorney General has, however, mounted a strong challenge to the claim, insisting that she never received any money. Director of Communications at the NPP, Nana Komia, however, told journalists today both Alfred Woyome and the Attorney General have something to hide.
The government is saying that the payments were wrong. So anybody, public official, who took part in those payments should be called to question. All of them. The payments, the paperwork was generated from Attorney General, through Ministry of Finance, through Comptroller and Accountant General, to the Bank of Ghana. So for Woyome to go and collect, you know, obviously there has been, I mean, Woyome on his own, one man, he can't go and collect the money. It has to be authorized by, from Attorney General to Finance. Finance cannot pay. He has to go to Comptroller. And then when Comptroller is happy, he then instructs Bank of Ghana. So it's a long chain. And how is it that all of these levels, everybody okayed the payments, which the government itself has said is a mistake and fraudulent? How? How is that possible? Is Woyome a magician? Has he got magical powers? No. The Supreme Court, through the efforts of Martina Midu, has ruled that the monies should be retrieved. Isn't that the case? So the legal case has foundation. How long is it? It's over 1 year. The government of Ghana, with a Supreme Court ruling, is not able to do the secondary legal processes to retrieve the money. I find it a little difficult. The government of Ghana, with all the resources we've given to them, all the land cruisers, and the, what is the other one? The one they use for rural electrification. Which one is that? That's the Lexus. With all the land cruisers, and the Lexus, and the Chryslers, and all of that we've given to them, then the Attorney Generals, all of these officials, the Supreme Court has given a ruling over 1 year. They haven't retrieved the money from Woyome. So we want all Ghanaians to put their weight behind these efforts, because it's their money, it's the money of the taxpayer.
Nana Komia also called for the prosecution of all public officials involved in the scandal.
Yesterday, to make matters even murkier, Mr. Woyome is claiming that even their current Attorney General's firm and clients also benefited from this huge gargantuan monies. So he doesn't see why, trying to harass him. Now the NPP calls on all Ghanaians to be vigilant, stand up and fight for these monies to be returned to the state. It is the money of the Ghanaian taxpayer. We're calling on Ghanaians to stand up and demand that the government retrieves our monies for us. The 51.2 million in 2010-2011 today is worth about 130 million Ghana cedis, using just the exchange rates. The exchange rate at that time was about 1.4 Ghana cedis to the dollar. Today, it is 3.7. So the 51.2, we should be demanding about 130 million Ghana cedis. The Supreme Court said that there was no basis for the payments and that the payments were in pursuit of an agenda to create loot and share. The government itself has said yes, the payments were fraudulent and that they were a mistake. So Ghanaians should demand the prosecution of all government and public officials who facilitated this fraud, this mistake, this great loot and share. This country is already suffering too much.
Attorney General Margaret Briapio is meanwhile confident the state will be successful in its appeal of the High Court decision to acquit businessman Alfred Woyome on charges he defrauded the state in a 51.2 million cedis judgment debt claim. The AG yesterday denied allegations by the businessman she benefited from the transaction and was therefore unfit to lead the prosecution. Mrs. Briapio says unlike the High Court's decision, the appeal will be heard by 3 justices.
Decisions are overturned on appeal all the time. There was one judge sitting as a High Court judge who gave this judgment, which we disagree with. Now there's opportunity for 3 law lords in the Court of Appeal to look at the case again. And they will decide whether the judgment was right, whether the judge erred, whether we did not prosecute a good case, we did not prove beyond reasonable doubt the elements of the crime. So a fresh panel of 3 law lords will look at the entire case again.
So from what I gather, you're basing your confidence with this appeal that because there are 3 lords who are going to be sitting over the case, it's likely that you would be successful this time. Is that all you're basing your confidence on, or there's something else?
I think the prosecution did a good case. The gentleman and the ladies who prosecuted this case are hard-working attorneys. They worked hard. They reviewed the evidence. They wrote a 50-page address. They assessed all the evidence. And I think they did a good job. Let's let the Court of Appeal also look at it again. Now, one thing people don't know is that the state must not secure a conviction at all costs, but justice must be done. And so if we go to the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal still thinks that we did not prove the case beyond reasonable doubt in the High Court. Well, that will be the decision of the court, but we are confident in our appeal. We hope we will succeed, but then we will let the Court of Appeal, decide.
There's also the issue about the monies that the Supreme Court says should be refunded to the state. How far has the AG gone in doing that?
Well, it's been a whole process, and I mean, I don't want to go through the details, but it started with a writ in the High Court, then matters went to the Supreme Court again, and entry of judgment filed. But currently, we have an application for enforcement of the judgment before the Supreme Court, a physical application which is before the Supreme Court for directions on actually enforcing the Supreme Court decision.
And how soon can Ghanaians expect that those monies will become available?
Well, the Supreme Court works in its own time. We are applying. I know my Solicitor General and the team are working to make sure that the case comes to the Supreme Court, or that application is heard by the Supreme Court as soon as possible. But remember that in that particular case, there are 2 parties who were ordered to recover money, Waterville and Woyome, in one case. And so we are not just dealing with Woyome, we are also dealing with Waterville. And so sometimes the steps are a little, it takes a little longer, especially where, for example, Waterville has initiated arbitration proceedings before the ICC, but that will not stop us from proceeding against Woyome, for example, to recover the money. What people don't know is that you can't throw people into prison for not paying a debt. If the person doesn't have assets, then you are stuck. But in this case, we will do everything we can to make sure that we uncover some assets and take the necessary steps to use it to defray the sum that the Supreme Court says we should recover.
The Prison Service Council says it may be forced to activate some of its powers which allow it to reject prisoners. This came up at a meeting between the Council and the Chief Justice Georgina Thuria-Wood. The meeting was convened to discuss the inhumane conditions hundreds of remand prisoners are forced to live in. Chairman of the Prison Service Council, Reverend Steve Wengam, says unless conditions in all 43 prisons across the country are improved, new inmates may be turned away.
1992 Constitution, Section 208, there is an interesting clause over there that says that one of the functions of the council is that the conditions under which persons may be admitted into prisons. So it means that it's depending upon the state of the prisons, the council looking at the way things, if we don't improve situations, it may get to a point where we may have to seek advice. If we have to invoke this powers of the council, it means at a point in time we may say, yeah, we can't accept because the police just come and dump them there and much is not done. We are really being pushed to the wall, but we don't want to get to that point, and we hope that from your end we can be helped to be able to deal with that. So.
Well, Chief Justice Georgina Wood says courts will soon be established in the various prisons to hear some of these cases. In other news, the Society of Private Medical and Dental Practitioners has issued a 6-week notice to the NHI to pay all its claims before May 1 this year. The society has threatened to deny access to NHI subscribers if its members' claims are not paid by the end of April. Addressing a news conference in Accra, President of the group, Dr. Kwesi Odoi-Dakun, said most of the private health facilities are struggling due to the non-payment of these claims.
The private health sector has not been paid by the NHI from August 2014 up to now. The private health sector cannot continue to provide for unpaid services. So we now hereby resolve to, 1, solicit the intervention of all stakeholders and those who care about good health services and universal health coverage to advocate on our behalf to get paid by the NHIA. 2, to work and operate strictly according to the contracts that we signed with NHIA. We signed contracts with NHIA, and the contract is that when you file your returns, they should pay you within 60 days of the filing of your returns. And as I said earlier, we've not been paid since August last year. 3, not to continue to offer services to NHIA card holders as from 1st May 2015, if all outstanding remunerations and arrears are not paid by the 30th of April 2015. So as from the 1st of May, anybody who patronizes our facilities with a card will be seen, provided the person is prepared to pay out of pocket. The private health sector is broke. Practitioners are being taken to court for non-payment of Senate contribution of their workers. I have some examples of some of the summons.
Meanwhile, the society is proposing a co-payment system as the best option to sustain the cash-strapped National Health Insurance Scheme. Dr. Kwesi Odoi-Dakun said the capitation grant being run now is incompetently being managed and will collapse if the scheme is not halted.
Many methods have been tried to sustain Ghana's health insurance, but in vain. We prescribe to the NHIA and the government co-payments. Yes, we know it is a social health insurance. Clients are prepared to contribute a little for competent and appropriate health services. Co-payment is a payment made by an individual who has health insurance, usually at the time a service is received. If it's a fixed sum, then everybody who has malaria contributes 5 cedis as co-payment. That's the first, one of the methods. The other one is a percentage of overall cost of service. It applies the same way, but this time it's not a fixed cost. It is a percentage. So if the total cost of treatment is 100 Ghana cedis, and the percentage is 10%, then it means the patient contributes 10% of the 100 Ghana cedis. And that's the second way we can work with co-payments. The third is a combination of both fixed sums and percentages. And the last one is called the deductibles. These are things that they deduct at source. Now, if in countries, the OECD countries, in many low and middle income countries, co-payment has been introduced since 1980s as an element in cost recovery user fees.
Ghana's focal person for the Africa Platform for Universal Health Coverage, Sidua Hall, however, says co-payment, or what is commonly referred to as cost sharing, is not an option he would advise the National Health Insurance Authority to even consider. Speaking on today's big story, Mr. Hall said the idea of co-payment would eventually take Ghana back to the days of cash and carry, which he says is not good for Ghana's pursuit of universal health coverage for its citizens.
I think it's a big no, and I think that I don't understand why any person or any group of person at this point of time who is suggesting co-payment. Co-payment, co-payment or agreeing to co-payment will be bringing back cash and carry. It was because we do not want out-of-pocket payment that we implemented the National Health Insurance Scheme, so that nobody will be pushed into financial catastrophe. So the analysis that went into that proposal. Otherwise, already in the way, people with National Health Insurance cards are still paying for certain services that are not covered. So suggesting that we should bring co-payment is out of place. And it's something that I think that we shouldn't be even be up for discussion. Co-payment is going to take us back there.
Also, supporters of the National Democratic Congress have marched through the principal streets of Kumasi to thank President John Mahama for what they claim to be the various developmental projects being undertaken under his administration. The march was also to drum up support for the ruling party, which aims to win more than 1 million votes in the next general elections in the region, which is the opposition's stronghold.
It was a peaceful procession as hundreds of NDC supporters took to the streets of Kumasi ostensibly to show that the party is gaining ground in the opposition stronghold. The marchers expressed their gratefulness for what they said has been an excellent performance by President Mahama. They were especially happy for what they describe as the development the Mahama administration has brought to Kumasi in particular and the Ashanti region in general.
The country's development is not only about the energy, borders on infrastructure, borders on the economy, borders on other sectors. And so if you have one sector failing, that's not an indication that the system is failing. But the good thing is that the government is on course, is doing what the people want. We appreciate the challenge around, and the president has indicated that it's going to be solved, not going to be managed. And that is a plus for us. So we are looking up to the day that is going to be solved, and we have faith in the president for that.
These supporters insist that even in the face of the unprecedented energy crisis facing the country, there is a lot to be said in praise of the Mahama administration. They believe that despite the energy crisis and all the flack government is taking for, the NDC should have no problem winning the 2016 election.
Our chances is very bright. Whether do so or not do so, our chances are still bright, and we are still going to win. Electricity is very important, but it's not the only thing. We talk of electricity, we can talk of water, we can talk of roads, we can talk of hospitals, right? So it's one out of 100,000.
From Kumasi, this has been Nuruddin Mohammed's report for Joy News.
This is Joy News Prime. We have more stories coming up after the break. Stay tuned. Two worker unions within the Electricity Company of Ghana are warning of dire consequences if government goes ahead with plans to privatize part of the company's operations. A report put together by the International Finance Corporation recommends the suspension of all expansion works by the ECG and a speedy implementation of proposals for private sector participation in the operations of the electricity company. The plans are part of conditions for the release of nearly $500 million under the Millennium Challenge Compact from the U.S. The Public Utilities Workers Union and the Public Services Workers Union have said the move will lead to the collapse of the rural electrification project. Kwete Nate reports.
The power distribution feasibility studies were carried out by the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank at the request of the government and Millennium Challenge Corporation 5 months ago. The 5-page report on the study stated that the government will have to adopt its recommendations as part of plans to introduce the private sector participation of ECG. The MCC wants Ghana to focus on efficiency and cut down on waste. Quote, efficiency is at odds with government focus on investment in growth by extension. While improvement in access is an important social goal, the single-minded pursuit of expansion needs to be kept to allow ECG management focus on improving efficiency, unquote. The report cautioned that the power distributors' deficit will worsen if the current emphasis on investment for expansion continues. But the Public Utility Workers Union and the Public Services Workers Union have kicked against the privatization of the ECG. In a document cited by Joy News, the groups say that the private sector participation could spell doom for rural electrification because the MCC does not consider it profitable. According to them, there are plans to privatize the Accra and Tema regions of the ECG. They insist that the power distributors' problem is not its ability to attract funding, but failure of government to pay its bills, revealing that its indebtedness to the ECG stands at 1.2 billion cedis. The firm position of the union groups is that if the challenge of power supply is not first addressed, the much-touted privatization will only bring about increased tariffs and accumulation of profits of the private sector. Reporting for Joy News, Kwete Nate.
In a related development, the USAID's outgoing director has advised against Ghana's decision to bring in emergency power barges as a short-term measure to address the country's energy crisis. The barges, which should augment the electricity supply, the current electricity supply, are expected to begin arriving in the country next month. Though the outgoing USAID head, James Beaver, admits the barges would help when they arrive, he says they are rather an expensive option. He told journalists that the U.S. Embassy in Accra, a much more viable option would have been to restore the power plants that are down.
Aside from the obvious austerity measures that come with doing without or having to cut back, in the short term, the options that your government has identified of trying to get some what's called barge-mounted power, which are basically mobile power generation equipment that can bring in and basically put in the dock in Tema or somewhere and run it into the lines. This happens in some other countries. I've had experience with that in Pakistan and other countries as well. It's a short-term solution, but it's going to be expensive. And the country is going to have to come up with the funds because it's a private deal. They're going to have to come up with the funds to assure the suppliers that they're going to get paid. And it's liquid fuel. It's fossil fuel fired, so it's going to cost.
Mr. Bever also expressed shock at Ghanaians' refusal to pay more for their electricity when the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission proposed the increase.
So the other thing I was surprised at when I came here was that Ghana, both the government and the people, were willing to actually arrange for higher prices for electricity. I did not think it would hold. I did not honestly think it would stick. The increases that I think netted out at about 55% power tariff increase, and there have been, I think, 4 or so quarterly increases in tariffs related to fuel last year before the oil price drop. I was so stunned that the Ghanaian people, the consumers, were willing to pay that higher price. And obviously the deal is they should get continued good service or better service as a result of it. And that's been a challenge because the dam is low, and that seems to be a climate-related problem. And there were maintenance problems, I think, on the fuel power stations. So there have been outages that they were not counting on, and the country was counting on Nigeria exporting its gas to Ghana at the level at which Ghana and Nigeria agreed. And that promise was not kept by the Nigerian government. So I know there's been challenges on that.
Parliament is considering a purchase agreement for the acquisition of a new military transport aircraft valued at about $35 million for the Ghana Armed Forces. The agreement for the purchase of the C-295 CASA aircraft and related accessories was today referred to the Defense and Interior Committee. The plane, among others, will be used for peacekeeping operations on behalf of the United Nations, for which Ghana will be reimbursed. Though MPs are yet to comment about the agreement on the floor of the House, minority MPs have raised objections. Member of Parliament for New Drabing South and member of the Finance Committee, Dr. Mark Esibeyeboa, says due diligence and value for money audits would have to be done before the aircraft is purchased.
It's a purchase agreement referred to the Defense and Interior Committee. At that committee, they should ask for the specifics, the specifications of the aircrafts. Now, why are we buying it from vendor A? How much would the same aircraft, let's say Airbus, whatever, how much would they sell from another vendor? Why are we procuring it from here? So those specifics, is it a 200-seater aircraft you are procuring? Those are details that the Committee for Defense and Interior will be asking. The last time that the country was involved in the purchase of aircrafts, there was some fishy deal on earth. So if we are going to purchase aircrafts again, we would want to ensure that there's value for money, there's transparency in the process. That's all that we are calling for. But we cannot forget about the past. The last time around, it was problematic. So we are just drawing attention to the fact that it is aircrafts again. You would recall that we had an issue with the purchase of aircrafts in 2010 under the late President Mills, for which reason he even set up a committee under the former Attorney General Martin Amidu to investigate. At the time, I think the people under investigation included the President now, John Mahama. But later on, we didn't hear anything about the purchase of aircrafts.
He is also objecting to the credit facility agreement being used to finance the purchase.
We objected to the loan. We said this was an odious loan. The terms were too high, interest rates high, and then the repayment terms were not beneficial to the country. So if we didn't partake in the approval of the original loan, I don't see any reason why we should go be partners in this second approval of the purchase agreement, because it's part of the original loan. The terms under which we procured the loan was not good. And so left to me alone, we will have nothing to do with this.
Well, we're staying in Parliament where the Chieftaincy Affairs Ministry is pushing for an amendment to the Chieftaincy Act. If approved, the revised law can be used to jail or fine anyone who refuses to attend a chief's summons. Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Elting John Brover joins us with more on this. Good evening to you. Good evening to you, Elting. Now, why is the Chieftaincy Ministry pushing for a change to the law?
Well, I'm sure you're aware, sometime back in 2011, the former Omanhene of Gosune, Bonahafo region, Dr. Nana Eje Ampofo, went to the Supreme Court to challenge Section 63D of the Chieftaincy Act 2008, which says that a person who refuses to honor a call from a chief to attend to an issue commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction of not more than 200 penalty units or 3 months in prison. Now, the decision of the Supreme Court was that the provision did not make room for a defense of a person who had a reasonable excuse for not honoring a chief's call. Consequently, the Supreme Court decided or ruled that the clause was unconstitutional, thereby reducing the powers of chiefs in this particular regard. Right. So therefore, if a chief should summon you to come to his or her palace, you can refuse to go and nothing can be done to you. Okay. Now, the Chieftaincy Minister is in Parliament to, as it were, to restore the powers of our chiefs. This time, what they've done is that the amendment they presented to Parliament, which is, you know, an issue that Parliament will tomorrow debate whether to accept or to reject, says that the chief can still call a subject to, you know, respond to an issue, but this time, the subjects, if the person is unable to appear before the chief, the person will have to offer an explanation. It will be based on that explanation that a decision will be taken as to whether to punish that person or not. So the difference between the two laws is that this time you have an opportunity to defend yourself before a chief, unlike previously where the chief discretion, you know, reigns supreme over any other issue. So the second reading was taken today. Tomorrow, the merits of this particular amendment will be debated on the floor so that the House can make some, you know, movement on this particular issue. But basically, they are seeking to restore the powers of our chiefs.
What are the MPs having to say about that?
Well, some say that the chiefs may misapply the clause if approved and amended to be part of the Chieftaincy Act. Some are also saying that they will be guided by the Supreme Court ruling, which means that you cannot go beyond what the Supreme Court says. That if, for instance, we have a National Sanitation Day, if a chief should summon all his subjects to participate in the National Sanitation Day and you are unable to participate, you have to offer a reasonable explanation. The chief cannot, on his own, punish you for the fact that you failed to participate in the exercise. So basically, it's just to restore the powers of our chiefs. But we'll wait and see the outcome of this particular meeting, more especially when the Supreme Court has ruled on this matter. And we are also awaiting the input of the Attorney General, because we are told that when the committee met, she was unable to provide a reasonable response to some memos sent to her office. Okay.
Anyway, so we'll wait to see how all this pans out, and then certainly we'll keep you updated right here on Joy News Prime. Some female assembly member aspirants have staged a protest march in the Tamale metropolis to show their displeasure with the Electoral Commission. The women say the postponement of the elections has cost them a lot of time and money. Here's a report by Hashmin Mohammed.
The protesters marched through the streets of Tamale from the Jubilee Park to the Northern Regional Coordinating Council, holding various placards. Some of the women who spoke to Joy News demanded compensation from the EC. The civil society groups which organized the demonstration are also demanding the removal of those whose actions led to the spending of over 317 million Ghana cedis on the botched elections. The groups are also advocating the setting up of a fixed date for future district-level elections, among others. Northern Regional Minister Alhaji Mohammed Muniru Limuna received the petition on behalf of government.
The Interior Minister Mark Oyongo has instructed various heads of security agencies to come up with measures aimed at sanitizing recruitment processes in the country. His comments follow the recent police recruitment scam in which at least one senior police officer has been implicated. He cautioned the various heads that they will be held responsible if any more of such scams are uncovered.
The service has its own challenges, the latest of which is what has become known as the recruitment scam, which has obviously come about as a result of the fact that the service has become an attractive institution. That notwithstanding, let me assure the general public that as far as the incident is concerned, it is being competently handled by the special task force that has been established to thoroughly investigate it and submit their report by the 20th of March, exactly a week from now. But let me also say that the incident is a wake-up call for the police to put its house in order, especially when it comes to recruitment. Never again should we experience any scam in recruitment into the police service and the other agencies under the Ministry of Interior. I shall hold the heads of the various agencies under the ministry responsible for lapses in future recruitments.
When we come back, we bring you business news with Eton Amsey. All right, time now for business, and Eton Amsey is here. Good evening, Eton.
Good evening,
what you have for us?
Well, it appears not everybody will lose their jobs this year. MTN is investing some 400 million cedis so that its employees don't lose their jobs.
Okay, so they are also faced with this power crisis and the challenges of the economy, and they were likely to lay off, but they're saying they're not going to lay off. They are
not going to lay off. They are investing, you know, but they're hoping that it doesn't get worse, you know, because he says that...
So if it gets really bad, they would have to.
Yeah,
it's possible.
All right, my name is Eton Amsey. Africa Center for Energy Policy questions the basis for Finance Minister's review of petroleum revenues in last week's revised policy statement. The Africa Center for Energy Policy, ACEP, has questioned the basis for Finance Minister's review of petroleum revenues when he presented the revised policy statement to Parliament last week. According to the center's SETECPE had no legal mandates to review the benchmark revenue projected from 1st September and certified by an independent certifier.
Review in the petroleum revenues was necessitated by the declining price of crude on the international market. Projected revenue for 2015 were initially put at 4.2 billion Ghana cedis based on crude oil price of $99 per barrel. However, in his statement, the minister revised the revenue projections downwards to 1.5 billion cedis based on an average crude oil price of $52 per barrel. This implies a shortfall of 2.7 billion Ghana cedis on petroleum revenue projections. ACEP argues while the initial projection was based on provisions of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, which provides for the use of a 7-year moving average formula for estimating the price, the law does not back the use of the revised crude oil price of $50 per barrel. The center says in the event of a fall in market price relative to the moving average base price, the minister can draw from the Ghana Stabilization Fund to smoothen spending. It therefore insists reviewing the projections of petroleum revenues in this sense only amount to an exercise of discretion that is not backed by law.
Right, leading telecom service provider MTN Ghana plans to invest over 400 million Ghana cedis in its operations as part of moves to mitigate challenges in the business environment compounded by the power crisis. Speaking to Joy Business at the company's annual editors forum, CEO Serami Tokubong said the company has had to re-strategize, especially in the wake of the power crisis, to avert laying off some of its workers.
Everybody else in Ghana, we are feeling the effect of the short-term impact of the economy. But I've also, like we stated clearly, we've taken a long-term view in terms of our investment and our role in Ghana. And like every other industry, we're going to have to, cut our cloth to fit our size, with the view of saying, of course, this period shall pass as well. And I think it's about continuing to invest in the economy so that when the economy does come back, we're not found wanting in terms of the capacity we have in our network. So we announced today, for instance, that just on network elements alone, over $85 million being spent on network. If you look at total IT and network, 460 million CDs being spent this year alone. And that's a key thing for us, that we will continue to build and expand our network so that when the economy recovers, we're not caught wanting, but we are ready for that upliftment.
Businesses in general continue to complain about the negative impact of key economic variables such as the cedi depreciation on their operations. This has compelled some of them to downsize and lay off some of its workforce. MTN says the power crisis has seen it lose some 25 million Ghana cedis, which was unbudgeted for.
If you just take the example of diesel alone, I'll say to you that roughly last year or before the surge, we were consuming less than 1 million liters of diesel a month. It's now up to 2 million. litres a month. I mean, I think if you just take the local price of diesel and multiply that, it means your diesel prices have actually doubled compared to year before. And I think those are the kind of numbers that you're looking at.
The MTN Editors Forum brought together news editors, representatives from the Ghana Media Commission, Ghana Journalists Association, and other media organizations.
The Millennium Development Goals project is set to be replaced by the Sustainable Development Goals project later this year after approval by world leaders. The Africa Center for Economic Transformation ASSET is in this light partnering Overseas Development Institute to find ways to fund some of the goals set out in the Sustainable Development project. Chief Economist of ASSET, Dr. Yawansu, is hopeful the partnership will be of immense benefit to the ordinary Ghanaian.
You know, in July, there's going to be a big global conference of all finance ministers about how we finance development going forward. And in September, the heads of states of all countries are going to meet in New York to develop, to agree on the sustainable development goals, the SDGs. Now, you know, ASSET, we are Africa Center for Economic Transformation. Basically, what we are seeking is for the transformation of African economies. And so going forward, it's important that we ensure that the level of finances, the type of finances, and the processes of financing economic transformation, inclusive growth, are in place.
ASSET organized an international conference on financing the Sustainable Development Goals, which brought together finance ministers and other stakeholders across the world. Speakers looked at ways to finance human development projects. Contributions from the private sector came up as part of the significant sources of funding. The group is therefore looking at long-term impacts of new and potential flows from capital markets and emerging power institutions on overall architecture of development financing.
We learn from our experience in the past, and hopefully we can do better. And I think there's a real opportunity for Ghana and countries in Africa to really get involved, take a hard look at themselves and where they've been, and try to learn from all their experiences and try to emphasize the good things that they've done and drop some of the bad things that have been holding us backwards.
The conference is expected to end on the 18th of March.
That's how we wrap up with business. Easy.
All right, thank you very much, Eton.
Thank you, Israel.
Up next, we bring you sports with George.
We begin sports on a pugilistic note. We talk some boxing now. Manager of boxer Richard Komi, Coach Loco, has exclusively told Joy Sports his trainee will turn up soon and become a world boxing champion in no time. Komi successfully defended his Commonwealth title against South African Thompson Mukwana at the Emperor's Palace in Johannesburg, South Africa last Saturday. And his coach Loco is optimistic Richard Komi would soon be in the top rank of world boxing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very happy for the stage we are now, or where Richard have took his career to. I mean, us are now having 21 fights with that kind of winnings. Yeah, Richard started from 2011 as his first fight, and as of today, the kind of fight, 21 fight within that range is very great and very good. The main is going to the top, but you don't have to rush. You have to take your time. We got in there for the Commonwealth, final eliminator in the UK, we won it. We go in for the Commonwealth title itself, we won it. We have got our defense, I mean, for the Commonwealth title. Now Richard is IBF number 12 in the world, trying to push himself there. This win will definitely change his position in the ranking to the top 10 or whatever. We are now planning to make sure Richard will have, his world title, mandatory titles like IBF to have some elimination, final elimination, that will take him to the title itself. Then we are ready. So our aim now is world title eliminations towards the world title.
Well, let's stay in the world of boxing itself, and now we can talk about what we're all looking up to. It's the May 2 bout between Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. And former heavyweight Mike Tyson believes Manny Pacquiao has the upper hand going into his May 2 bout against Floyd Mayweather Jr., given the advantage to Pacman due to the stylistic differences between both fighters. Anticipation continues to build up for the longer-awaited fight, and Tyson is but the latest to give his, comments on these two. We'll find out what he says now. All right, so that's Mike Tyson for you. We'll move from the pugilistic note and talk some football now. UEFA Champions League currently underway, and Arsenal fans will probably have their hearts in their mouth right now. Very understandable. They're actually down by 3-1 in the first leg. They currently lead by 1-0, and there's a lot to talk about in that one as well. We also have a look at last season's finalists, Atletico Madrid, who are also in it against Bayer Leverkusen. Let's have a look at the results right now. First of all, start with the Arsenal game that's taking place in France, and very well as it was, they lost by 3-1 the first leg. They need to score 3 unanswered goals. Many have doubted them. At the end of the first half, Olivier Giroud got the goal for Arsenal, and I must say Arsenal are playing very well. It would not be far away, in terms of getting all those 3 goals, but it's a very big ask, especially against AS Monaco, who are not looking bad. We can talk about Atletico Madrid. Alvaro Suarez got the goal for them. They lead by 1-0. In the first leg, it was 1-0 against them because Bayer Leverkusen won in Germany. It's currently 1-1 on aggregate, and there is a lot more in all these games we're looking at. 2 teams definitely would have to qualify out of this tonight. We know who is going to be doing that, of course. And then we'll just be wrapping up right now in terms of what we have on sports. We'll see how it goes. That'll be all for sports tonight. I'm George Adda Jr. Israelite will join us with some more. You have a good night.
The Bank of Ghana is not printing new currency notes. The public should therefore disregard photographs of the supposed currency notes circulating on social media. The photos appeared real and got many believing the story behind it. But who produced these pictures and how did they make their way to social media? Efwa Akwahari Singh has the answers.
24-year-old Hollison Adiku's life may never be the same. Until last weekend, Hollison was just a photographer going about his business. That is until a copy of his work went viral.
It was given to us at school. Our teacher asked us what we think we should do for our understanding. And then we voted. So somebody suggested we do money.
So Hollison, is there a particular reason why you chose to do 30 CDs, 100 CDs, 300 CDs?
Not really, but we were just asked not to do what already exists, but we can draw inspiration from what already exists, but we shouldn't use the same element.
Hollison's 2011 IPMC school project had Ghanaians asking questions from whether the Bank of Ghana was releasing new notes to comments linking the photographs to party politics. Hollison admits the news scared him a little.
How people were thinking as the presidents trying to do blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I got scared.
But would the Bank of Ghana allow a social media leak if it was really considering the introduction of new currency denominations? I called Public Relations Officer at the bank, A.C. Hammond, to find out the process involved in issuing new currency.
There are a lot of things that we have to do. The stakeholder engagement. You have to let the country know. So definitely the presidency would have to know, Parliament would have to know. We have to engage the media. We probably would send a press release and follow it up with a press conference. We'll issue all educational materials that are necessary. For example, we need to know why they are bringing any denominations out, and then we'll tell you what they look like, color, the security features, and all that. So for a long period, a number of months, would like to engage the public throughout the country to get to understand that this is exactly what the money would look like when it eventually comes out.
The young man in question has been a bit uneasy when he heard about the story. He felt, he could be in a lot of trouble. Why shouldn't he be so worried about that?
I mean, there are students, for example, of web designing, graphic designing, who might want to be designing all manner of things. And that could include somebody testing his or her creativity when it comes to designing the money, for example. That would have been okay. But having Bank of Ghana on it and it coming out the way it did is a source of concern for everybody. This is why the bank always stresses the need to get into understanding what the security features of every note are.
So next time you see a purported new CD note, please read between the lines. Besides, these pictures have quite a few words that tell the whole story.
For legal tender for the payments of any amount.
Ifwa Akwa Harrison, Joy News, Accra.
And that'll be all for the bulletin. Before we go a quick round through our top stories, the New Patriotic Party has described the current tiff between the Attorney General and the businessman embroiled in the judgment debt controversy, Alfred Woyome, as a ploy to distract Ghanaians from the real issues. Meanwhile, the Attorney General says she's confident the state will be successful in its appeal against the acquittal of Alfred Woyome on charges he fraudulently claimed the judgment debt payout. Sympathizers of the ruling National Democratic Congress have marched in Kumasi in support of President Mahama. The outgoing U.S. aid country directors advised against Ghana's decision to rely on power barges as a short-term solution to the electricity crisis because of the prohibitive cost involved. And Parliament is considering the purchase of a $35 million plane for the Ghana Armed Forces, but minority MPs say not enough due diligence has been done on the purchase agreement. That'll be all for the bulletin. My name is Suzolai. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good evening.
This is Joy News Prime.